Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, just for a moment, you wake up tomorrow and you're in charge.
In charge of everything.
Exactly. You're the president, the prime minister, the supreme leader, but just for one day, 24 hours.
Okay, got it. One day.
What's the very first, most absolutely ridiculous yet secretly brilliant thing you'd do?
That's a tough one. Ridiculous, but brilliant.
Yeah. Would it be like free Biryani Fridays, or maybe a national nap hour, or, I don't know, a no-reply all decree? That one's tempting.
Chuckles. The no reply all decree definitely has appeal. Maybe mandatory funny hats on Tuesdays.
See? You get it. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that thought experiment, the enduring, fascinating, and surprisingly impactful world of President for a Day satire.
Yeah, okay. So why that specific format keeps grabbing people?
Right. It's a format that keeps gripping audiences across eras, across cultures, offering these, well, satirical solutions to serious problems, and we're going to find out why.
Makes sense. It does seem to pop up everywhere.
Our mission, then, is to explore why this specific brand of humor has such staying power. What does it tell us about ourselves, about our society?
And how it often blurs that line, right, between just having a laugh and actually having some real-world impact.
Exactly. We'll trace its historical roots, delve into its psychological punch, and even look at how a seemingly silly what if, maybe free Biryani Fridays, can lead to genuine civic engagement.
What's truly fascinating here, and what we'll dig into, is the consistent thread of how something starting as a joke, just a bit of fun, can evolve to reveal some pretty profound truths. Truths about how we govern ourselves, about public feeling, public sentiment.
Okay.
We're going to uncover some surprising facts, like how real political movements have actually been kicked off by comedians.
No kidding. Started by comedians.
Yeah. And how an imagined minister of queuing, it sounds absurd, right?
Yeah.
Can actually expose fundamental issues in public service. Things that, dry reports just can't capture in the same way.
Huh. A minister of queuing. I like it.
It really raises an important question for all of us, I think. When is a joke much more than just a joke? And, maybe more importantly, what can that tell us about our societies today?
That is a crucial question, and maybe a little unsettling, isn't it?
How so?
Well, it seems to suggest this deep disconnect, maybe. A sense that, traditional institutions might be failing to speak to those everyday frustrations people feel.
That's a strong possibility. That the formal channels aren't working or aren't trusted.
And maybe that's why these seemingly absurd decrees, even when they're clearly jokes, they resonate so deeply with us as individuals and collectively, too.
Which brings us perfectly to the psychology of it all. Why do we laugh at this stuff?
So, we're talking about this really interesting phenomenon. And, when we think about how potent this kind of satire can be, it makes you ask, where did it even come from?
Right. It doesn't feel like something new.
Exactly. Because this idea, this impulse to playfully imagine yourself in power just so you can critique the people who actually hold it, it has deep, deep roots. We're talking centuries back, across continents. It's definitely not a new invention. Let's talk about these universal truth tellers first. Think medieval Europe. You had the court jesters, right?
Yeah, the guys in the funny hats and bells.
Yeah, exactly. With their motley clothes, their bells. Often, they were the only ones who could actually get away with openly mocking the king or queen.
Dangerous job, I imagine.
Definitely. But they were more than just entertainers. They were like conduits for uncomfortable truths.
A necessary role, perhaps?
And it wasn't just Europe. If you look at the Muslim world, you find figures like the Hakawatis, that's Hakawatis, sort of like traveling storytellers or bards.
Okay.
And the Qawwals, Qawwals, they perform devotional poetry and music. Now, these were master storytellers. They'd weave subversive anecdotes, little allegories into their narratives.
Ah, so subtle critique.
Exactly. Subtly critiquing the powerful with wit, with double meanings. Imagine a ruler listening to this beautiful story, right? And then suddenly realizing, maybe with a little smile, that the hero's problem or some king's mistake in the tale.
It sounds suspiciously familiar.
Precisely. It mirrors his own latest policy blunder. Clever stuff.
Very clever. And you mentioned India, too.
Right. In Sanskrit drama, there were the Viduka clowns. VIDUSHAKA. These were specific comedic characters. And through their antics, they're often quite rude observations. They'd comment on social, political foolishness, much like a medieval jester, really.
So across all these different cultures, different times,
yeah.
What's the common thread?
Their unique position, or license almost, to speak truth to power.
Precisely. And what underpins all these ancient roles is what we can maybe call a jester's bargain. It's like the core, the genetic code of this type of humor.
The jester's bargain.
Okay, what's the deal?
The deal is basically, I'll amuse you, I'll make you laugh, but
Yeah.
I'll also say what others can't or won't.
So the humor is like protect.
Exactly. It highlights this crucial protective function of humor. Think about it in societies where directly confronting authority could get you imprisoned, or worse.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Humor offered this vital shield. By wrapping critique up in laughter, these figures could point out flaws, question decisions, expose corruption, without necessarily inviting the ruler's full wrath. At least not immediately.
So it's like a temporary pressure release.
Exactly.
Sure.
It allowed for this temporary imagined overturning of the rules, even if just for a laugh, without direct repercussions right then and there.
Okay.
So what's fascinating is how this ancient tradition basically established a kind of safe space for critique.
Yeah.
It let people imagine flipping the rules just for fun without getting into serious trouble.
Which makes you wonder, how does that legacy, that tradition of veiled critique continue to shape, today's digital satire? Especially now with anonymity, comediacy, the stakes feel different.
That is the crucial question, isn't it? How does that ancient DNA adapt to the speed and scale of the internet? Because it certainly has adapted.
That's a really good point. It highlights just how dynamic this kind of humor is. Because, like you said, it's not static. It's evolved remarkably through the ages, always adapting, new technologies, societal shifts, but it always seems to keep that core jester's bargain you described.
It really does. So maybe we should trace that journey, see how it changed.
Let's do it. So, back in classical and medieval times, as we just discussed, you had the jesters, the satirical bards. They laid the groundwork.
Lampooning the rich, the powerful.
Right, pointing out their excesses, the foolishness of their policies, just the general absurdity of power, all under that cloak of humor, setting the stage for something more, formalized later on.
And their work was mostly spoken, right? Performed live.
Yeah, mostly oral, in courts, public squares, a very direct, intimate kind of engagement.
Then came a truly pivotal shift, the print revolution. We're talking the 1700s.
Things get written down.
Mass-produced.
Exactly. And this is where we see figures like Jonathan Swift emerge, and his seminal work, A Modest Proposal, from 1729. Oh yeah, the one about eating babies.
That's the one. Swift didn't just tell jokes. He perfected what we call the absurd policy device.
Okay, what's that?
He coolly, logically, completely deadpan proposed something utterly outrageous. In this case, that the impoverished Irish should sell their babies as food to the wealthy English.
Which is just horrific.
Horrific. But the shock wasn't just for shock value, it was a devastating indictment. It exposed the real moral failure of English policy towards the Irish poor.
So the extreme fiction highlighted a real horror.
Precisely. He used this extreme fictional decree to throw a harsh spotlight on a very real, very terrible societal issue. And it basically defined a new standard for this kind of political satire. Powerful enough to shame, not just amuse.
He certainly did. And what's striking is how Swift's method, this audacious, absurd policy, delivered deadpan. It really paved the way for visual satire, didn't it? Making the critique even more accessible.
Spot on. Which takes us into the 1800s.
Yeah.
And the rise of caricature. This added another really powerful layer.
Newspapers, magazines.
Exactly. With the growth of newspapers, mass media, visual satire just exploded. Publications like Punch in London became famous for their political cartoons.
I've seen some of those. Really sharp.
They often use things like fake decrees, caricatured royal edicts, drawings of politicians doing ridiculous things, all to critique government policy and public figures.
And pictures cross language barriers, too.
Right. These visual gags made the satire accessible to an even wider audience. They translated complex political arguments into easily digestible, often hilarious images. Anyone could understand the jab.
So print, then pictures. What came next?
Well, as we move into the early to mid-1900s, technology globalizes this parody even further. Cinema, radio.
Mass media arrives.
Big time. They brought political satire to mass audiences in a way nobody had seen before. Think about Charlie Chaplin, The Great Dictator, 1940.
Oh, iconic. The speech, the globe.
Exactly. His performance, especially that famous "As If I Were Ruler" speech where he's juggling the globe balloon, it wasn't just funny, it was this incredibly powerful global moment.
Why so powerful?
Because it magnificently punctured the grandeur, the terrifying pomposity of authoritarian figures like Hitler and Mussolini. Chaplin used comedy to strip away their aura of power, showing millions how ridiculous, how vulnerable these dictators actually were.
Wow. Using comedy against fascism.
It showed how single comedic performance could reach millions, influence international public opinion at a really critical moment in history.
Okay, so movies, radio, then TV, I guess.
You got it. By the late 1900s, we see the professionalization of TV satire. Shows like, Minister and later, Prime Minister in the UK.
Classics. Still funny today.
Absolutely. Or Saturday Night Live in the US. They didn't just dabble in political humor, they made it routine, polished, a regular feature of entertainment.
Yeah, SNL's presidential impersonations are legendary.
They institutionalized these "If I Led the Country" monologues, spoof press conferences, sketches satirizing the inner workings of government. It made political satire a regular, expected part of the cultural landscape. Politicians became recurring characters, policy debates became fodder for weekly laughs.
It normalized poking fun at power on a massive scale.
Precisely. Which brings us right up to now. The digital native explosion, 2000s to the present.
YouTube, TikTok, Instagram.
All of them. These platforms have just supercharged this trope. They've democratized its creation, its spread.
Oh, so...
Well, you see these tightly edited viral videos, parody policy memos designed to look official, creators actively asking their audience, comment your first law, that kind of thing.
Right, interactive satire.
Exactly. This shift has made satire incredibly accessible, participatory. It's become a genuine civic on-ramp for many people, especially younger audiences.
A civic on-ramp. I like that.
Zooming out a bit, the shift to digital platforms really democratized that old jester role, didn't it?
Yeah.
Anyone with a phone can propose absurd policies, engage in civic thought experiments.
So what's the broader implication of that for the speed and reach of satirical ideas today?
It's huge. The ability for a joke, a satirical idea, to go global in minutes, influencing conversations across borders. That's a profound evolution from the jester whispering in the king's ear. The scale is just incomparable.
That's a really powerful point about the reach. And here's a lesser known fact that might just blow your mind a little.
Okay, I'm ready.
Sometimes these president for a day jokes, they actually spill over into actual politics with surprisingly real consequences.
Really, like joke candidates winning.
We're not just talking about influencing opinion here. We're talking about actual political movements starting out as satire or being led by performers who, just started out trying to make people laugh.
Wow. The surprising crossover indeed.
Okay, case study. John Nahr's Best Party in Iceland.
Iceland, okay.
John Nahr was a well-known comedian there, and in 2010, he ran for mayor of Reykjavik, the capital city.
On a serious platform?
Not at all. His platform was deliberately outrageously tongue-in-cheek. He promised things like free towels in all the swimming pools, a polar bear for the city zoo.
Oh, polar bear.
And remember this one. The implementation of a minister of queuing to solve the nation's waiting line problems.
Okay, clearly satire. A critique of politicians making empty promises.
Exactly. It was all a big joke, a critique of traditional politicians and their usual spiel. But here's the twist.
He won.
He won. The Best Party won the most seats, and he became mayor.
You're kidding.
Nope. And he didn't just win and, make more jokes. He actually governed. For 4 years, his administration implemented real reforms, brought this fresh, unconventional approach to city politics.
So the joke candidate actually governed effectively.
Yeah, he proved that even a joke, even a satirical campaign can sometimes pave the way for real change.
That's incredible. Is that a one-off, though?
Not entirely. Think about Beppe Grillo and the five-star movement in Italy.
Ah, yes, I've heard of him. Another comedian, right?
Exactly. Grillo was a prominent Italian comedian, also a blogger. He used his platform, his shows, his blog to just rail against traditional politics corruption, often in very comedic, outrageous ways.
So using humor as a weapon again.
Absolutely. His comedic rants, his satirical rallies, they catalyzed the five-star movement, which grew from this grassroots, anti-establishment, humor-driven force into a major political power in Italy.
Didn't they end up in government?
They did. They became one of the largest parties, even formed coalition governments, started by a comedian's satirical critiques.
Wow. What's fascinating here, then, is how these examples really challenge our definition of serious politics, doesn't it?
Totally. What counts as serious?
They show that when traditional political institutions are seen as out of touch or ineffective or corrupt,
which happens,
comedic figures, people initially operating in the realm of satire, can tap into this deep vein of public frustration. They offer an alternative that somehow resonates powerfully.
bypassing the usual channels.
Exactly. Which leads us to ask, what does it truly tell us about public trust in those traditional institutions when comedians can effectively step into power?
Yeah, what does it tell us?
It suggests, perhaps, that authenticity, a fresh perspective, even if it's delivered through humor, can connect deeply with voters, maybe more deeply than polished political messaging sometimes.
That's a really sharp point, and maybe a bit unsettling, like I said before.
Unsettling how?
It points to that disconnect again. If people trust the comedian more than the politician, it suggests the system isn't speaking their language, maybe?
Or isn't addressing their core concerns.
And perhaps that's precisely why these absurd decrees, these president-for-a-day fantasies, even as jokes, hit home so hard. Individually, collectively, they tap into something real.
Which brings us right back to the psychology. Why do we find these funny? What's going on in our heads?
Okay, so that's really thought-provoking. Why do we laugh at these things, these absurd decrees, these ridiculous policies? It's not just random noise, is it? There's got to be some serious psychology behind it, making this whole president-for-a-day thing so universally appealing.
Absolutely. There are a few key theories that help explain it.
Okay, lay them on me.
Well, one of the main drivers is something called incongruity theory.
Incongruity, like things not fitting together.
Exactly. The theory suggests that the laugh sparks from a fundamental mismatch, a clash. You have the grand, solemn office of a leader, president, prime minister, or whatever.
Right, very serious business.
Juxtaposed against a petty, almost mundane decree, something completely out of scale with the office.
Like the 15-minute meeting rule we mentioned.
Perfect example. Imagine a constitutional amendment capping all meetings at exactly 15 minutes. The sheer absurdity of enshrining that at the highest level of law. That's the incongruity.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's that unexpected twist between what is the serious office and what should be serious policy versus what the joke proposes, the silly policy. That gap, that mismatch, is what triggers the humor. The bigger the gap, often the bigger the laugh.
Okay, incongruity. Got it. What else?
Building on that, relief theory also plays a pretty big role.
Relief? Relief from what?
Relief from anxiety, frustration. Politics can be incredibly stressful, right? It often leaves people feeling powerless, worried.
Tell me about it.
This type of humor offers a psychological pressure release valve. By staging this fantasy of control, if I were in charge for a day, even just for a moment, it allows individuals to vent those anxieties about political frustrations. It's like letting out a long-held breath of collective worry. It provides this cathartic experience where, just for a second, you get to be in charge and fix everything with a wave of your comedic magic wand.
Okay, so it's like a little mental escape hatch.
Kind of. And perhaps the most comprehensive explanation comes from something called benign violation theory.
Benign violation. Sounds contradictory.
It does. But that's the key. The theory suggests something is funny when it's perceived as a violation, meaning something that feels threatening, maybe offensive, or just plain wrong.
Okay.
But simultaneously perceived as benign, meaning it's harmless, it's safe, it's clearly not to be taken seriously.
Give me an example.
Think about free Biryani Fridays again. Our minds instantly register the violation. Wait, you can't just hand out free food to everyone. That's not how economics works. That's unsustainable.
Right, alarms go off.
But it's instantly benign because we know it's a joke. It's not a real policy about to crash the economy. It's play.
Okay. The violation isn't actually threatening.
Exactly. That playful tension, that safe exploration of a forbidden or absurd idea. That's precisely what makes us laugh. It allows us to explore difficult concepts, imagine radical changes, confront uncomfortable truths, all without any real-world consequences. Like Swift's baby-eating proposal, horrifying violation, but benign because it's clearly satire.
So incongruity, relief, and benign violation, they all kind of work together.
They do. And looking at the larger canvas, these theories reveal something important. Humor isn't just amusement. It's a fundamental, cognitive, emotional coping mechanism. It helps us process complex or stressful realities.
Like politics.
Like politics. It lets us engage with difficult subjects from a safe distance, mentally try on extreme solutions, articulate collective frustrations in a non-threatening way. It's really a testament to the human mind's ability to find light, find ways to cope with the challenging parts of governance and society. It makes the unbearable bearable, maybe just for a moment, through shared laughter.
Okay, so that's the individual psychology. But beyond that chuckle, this kind of satire creates these profound ripple effects, doesn't it, throughout society? It shapes how we think, how we bond, maybe even how we engage with the world.
Absolutely. The societal impacts are significant.
So what's one of the first things we see?
One of the most immediate impacts is on social identity and group bonding.
How does that work?
Well, when a comedian proposes free Biryani Fridays and it resonates with people, it creates this instant in-group shorthand.
Like an inside joke.
Exactly. It's a collective wink. If you get the joke, you understand the underlying frustration it's poking fun at. Maybe it's inflation making basics unaffordable. Maybe it's the indignity of long queues for government services. Maybe it's systemic corruption.
You don't even need to spell it out.
Right. You don't need to name names directly. This shared understanding fosters a powerful sense of community. Solidarity. It's a way for people to feel connected, to know they're not alone in their experiences, and to bond over common grievances, common hopes, all through the vehicle of humor.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, who hasn't been stuck in some ridiculous line somewhere, wishing someone would just hand them a comforting meal, or just acknowledge the absurdity? That collective sigh of understanding, that's what these jokes tap into.
Precisely. And this collective understanding also leads to something we can call cognitive rehearsal.
Cognitive rehearsal, like practicing thinking.
Sort of. When you hear these imagined decrees, a national nap hour, a ministry of queue management, it subtly prompts you, the listener, to engage in policy thinking yourself. You start asking yourself, maybe subconsciously, well, what would I fix first? Or what's really the most pressing problem here?
Ah, okay. It sparks your own what if.
Exactly. It's a low-stakes, engaging way for individuals to participate in policy thinking, civic reflection. You're essentially rehearsing your own civic priorities, but without the pressure of a formal debate or needing all the facts. It makes abstract concepts of governance feel personal, relatable.
And it's probably more effective than just reading a policy paper for making things stick.
Definitely. Which leads to another point, norm policing.
Policing norms, like enforcing rules.
In a way, satire can stigmatize things like waste, hypocrisy, cruelty far more effectively and certainly more memorably than a dry white paper or a formal government report ever could.
How?
A well-placed joke, an absurd policy proposal. It can highlight an absurdity or a moral failing in a way that just sticks with the public. It becomes part of the common discourse. It can influence public sentiment more powerfully than direct criticism sometimes.
Because it makes the unacceptable seem ridiculous.
Exactly. It makes it seem ridiculous and therefore less tolerable. It's almost like a social immune response kicking in, powered by laughter.
Interesting.
And what's also fascinating, especially now in the digital age, is its role in fostering a participatory culture.
You mentioned this before, the comment sections.
Right. On platforms like YouTube, TikTok. The comment sections under these satirical videos become these mini assemblies. People aren't just passively watching. They're actively engaging.
Drafting their own mock laws.
Yeah. Proposing amendments, debating the merits of these fictional policies. The creators, in this context, they're like court jesters of the feed. They're actively inviting direct audience engagement, turning passive consumption into active participation.
So the laughter becomes interactive.
It transforms individual laughter into this collective interactive experience of civic imagination. The key takeaway from all this really is how satire, in this President for a Day format, it really transcends simple entertainment.
It's doing more work than just making us laugh.
Right. It becomes this powerful tool for social cohesion, for critical thinking, even for subtly shaping public discourse by making complex issues relatable, discussable. It fosters this sense of shared citizenship, maybe even a little bit of agency.
That collective engagement you're talking about, I mean, we see it exploding today, don't we? Fast forward to now, and this President for a Day trope, it feels like it's everywhere, especially in our digital lives. It's become this cornerstone of contemporary entertainment, and maybe even a surprisingly potent force in how we get our information.
It really has saturated the landscape.
You just see this in the sheer pop culture ubiquity of the format, right?
Absolutely.
Late night monologues, they're constantly riffing on the latest political absurdity. Sketch comedy channels on YouTube are churning out these brilliantly tight policy parodies. Improv troupes doing If I Were President PM bits.
It's a reliable format.
And they consistently generate viral hits. These segments are snappy, they're memeable, they're incredibly remixable, perfectly suited for how we consume stuff online now, that rapid-fire pace.
They get shared, reshared, reinterpreted.
Yeah. Across all the platforms, keeping the conversation going, extending its reach way beyond the original audience.
And this is where it gets really interesting for our listeners, I think. This explosion of civic satire. It has a direct impact on news literacy, especially for younger audiences.
How so? Making news funnier?
Well, in an era where traditional news consumption can feel overwhelming, maybe even depressing.
Yeah, the doom scrolling.
Right. Young people often learn the basic contours of policy debates, economic challenges, social issues through these jokes.
The satire is like teaching them.
In a way, satire translates those otherwise technocratic, maybe boring issues like budget deficits, healthcare reform details into everyday stakes. Makes them understandable, relatable.
Like the biryani in the queues.
Exactly. It acts as a kind of cheap ticket into understanding complex policy discussions. It provides an accessible entry point that might otherwise feel intimidating or just dull.
Huh. Never thought of SNL as civics education, but maybe.
Speckles, maybe indirectly. And it's also become a form of brand-safe comedy for content creators online.
Brand safe, meaning advertisers are okay with it.
Generally, yes. Digital platforms, especially YouTube, they tend to reward formats that are playful, clearly satirical, and this is key, explicitly not targeted harassment or hate speech.
Avoiding the toxic stuff.
Right. And the President for a Day format, when it's crafted carefully, naturally fits this mold. It lets creators engage with topical, even controversial issues, but in a way that's humorous, thought-provoking, highly shareable, without usually running afoul of content guidelines.
So it's strategically smart for creators, too.
It can be, which contributes to its prevalence. Zooming out a bit, in this era of just information overload, shrinking attention spans, humor is becoming almost an essential packaging for complex ideas.
Especially for younger generations.
Especially for them, yeah. It broadens public debate simply by lowering those entry barriers, making policy discussion feel less intimidating, more approachable. It's not just about getting a laugh, it's about making these complex realities digestible, engaging, fostering a more informed citizenry, even if it's, humorously informed.
Okay, but while it's often dismissed as, just jokes, the reality seems to be that this form of satire carries significant weight and sometimes real risks too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a powerful tool, no doubt. But like any powerful tool, it demands really careful consideration. We need to look at the ethical dimensions, the potential pitfalls. It's not all fun and games.
So let's challenge that common myth right away. Satire is just jokes. Is it ever just jokes?
Rarely, I'd argue. The reality is much more complex. Satire actively shifts agendas.
Ow.
Politicians, policymakers, even the public. They frequently respond to comedic framing because it so effectively refracts public sentiment and it can profoundly influence perception.
So a joke can force a reaction?
It can. A well-crafted satirical piece, a sketch, a cartoon, a fake decree can highlight an issue or maybe even a person in a way that just sticks in the public consciousness. It forces a response where maybe direct criticism or a factual report might have just been ignored. It's a powerful form of political leverage, used intentionally or not.
Okay, so it has real power, which means it can be dangerous too.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which leads us directly to a really crucial ethical tension, one we all need to be mindful of whether we're creating satire or consuming it, and that's the difference between punching up versus punching down.
Punching up versus punching down. Explain that.
Punching up is using humor to critique those in power, governments, corporations, societal structures, privilege. That's generally seen as the legitimate function of satire.
Okay, so punching down is?
Punching down is when humor targets marginalized groups, individuals without power, or incites hostility against vulnerable communities. When that happens, it ceases to be civic satire.
It becomes?
Essentially, yes. It transforms into policy-adjacent bullying. This is a critical distinction for you, the listener, to consider. True satire punches up. Punching down isn't just ethically problematic, it often violates platform rules, crosses ethical boundaries for creators. It's no longer just humor. It's using humor as a weapon against those who can't easily fight back.
That's a really important line to draw.
Crucial. And there's another significant risk. The misdisinformation risk.
People taking the joke seriously.
Exactly. Deadpan satire, especially when it's really well executed, delivered without obvious cues. It can easily be mistaken for a real proposal, particularly by audiences who maybe lack context or aren't very media literate.
Yeah, I've seen satirical headlines shared as real news.
It happens all the time. Satirical news articles, policy spoofs, they get shared as factual information. It leads to confusion, spreads misinformation, which really emphasizes that creators should clearly signpost the bit, make it obvious it's satire.
So what does this mean for creators and consumers? How do you balance the humor with clarity?
It means clarity and intent are paramount. Without clear indicators, visual cues, verbal disclaimers, maybe an absurd enough premise, a well-meaning joke can unintentionally become a vector for false information. And that completely undermines its purpose, right?
Yeah.
Instead of illuminating truth, it obscures it.
Right. Okay, any other dangers?
Finally, we have to acknowledge the challenges of censorship and chilling effects.
Meaning satirists getting shut down.
Yes. In some political contexts, creating political parody, even if it's meant to be constructive, can face real penalties, legal action, fines, job loss, even physical threats.
That makes it incredibly risky.
It creates this really challenging environment where ambiguity, always just joking, becomes both a shield for the satirist but also a risk, because authorities can still interpret it as a direct attack and punish them anyway. It highlights the precarious tightrope satirists have to walk in less open societies. So this raises a really important question. Given all these risks, how do we ensure that the power of satire is used constructively? How do we reap the benefits without causing harm? It truly highlights the ethical tightrope walk. It's a powerful tool, like fire maybe. It needs to be wielded with responsibility, with clear intent, if it's going to actually benefit the public sphere and not just, cause chaos or hurt people.
Okay, so it's powerful, potentially dangerous. Believe it or not, academics actually love to dissect this kind of humor too, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are some fascinating academic frameworks for understanding its deeper significance, moving beyond just the laugh and looking at its profound societal functions.
All right, let's get academic for a minute. Who's got theories on this?
Well, one of the most insightful perspectives comes from a Russian literary theorist named Mikhail Bakhtin. He had this concept of the carnival.
Carnival, like rides and cotton candy.
Not chuckles. Not exactly. Bakhtin looked at ancient and medieval festivals, carnivals, and he noticed that during these specific times, there would be this temporary suspension of normal social rules. All the usual hierarchies got flipped upside down just for a little while.
Okay. Power gets inverted.
Exactly. For a brief, maybe intoxicating moment, power would flip. The common crowd would get to, metaphorically, try on the ruler's voice. They could mock authority, expose the absurdity of hierarchy.
Ah, I see the connection. President for a Day is like a mini carnival.
Precisely. You can immediately see the connection. These satirical bits create a kind of modern-day carnival, where for a few minutes the audience gets to imagine themselves in charge, playfully dismantling and rebuilding society in their heads. It's a way of critiquing the existing power structures by temporarily overturning them in jest.
That makes a lot of sense. Thinking back to John Nahr in Iceland, that was like a real-life carnival, wasn't it? The whole city got to experience that power flip, voting in the comedian.
Spot on. It perfectly embodies Bakhtin's idea of that temporary suspension of norms leading to critique, and in his case, even real change. It shows satire's role isn't just entertainment, it's a critical part of public discourse, maybe even a rehearsal for a civic shift.
Okay, who else? Any other big theories?
Then there's Jürgen Habermas, a German philosopher and sociologist. He talked a lot about the public sphere.
The public sphere? Like where public debate happens?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Habermas envisioned this ideal public sphere where rational, critical debate could flourish, where informed public opinion could develop and hold power accountable.
And how does satire fit into that?
What's fascinating is how satire, especially in this accessible President for a Day format, can significantly broaden that public debate. How? By lowering the entry barriers.
Making it easier for people to join the conversation.
Exactly. It acts as that cheap ticket into complex policy talk we mentioned earlier. By making weighty political issues accessible, even fun, humor can draw in individuals who might otherwise feel alienated or intimidated by formal political discourse. It helps contribute to a more inclusive, more vibrant public sphere, closer to Habermas's ideal.
Okay, Bakhtin's carnival, Habermas's public sphere, anything from a moral angle.
Yes, and here's where it gets really interesting, I think, from a moral perspective. Moral philosophy, particularly when looking at the ethics of satire, suggests that good satire functions in a specific way.
How?
First, it identifies a moral wrong or a societal failing or just something that isn't right.
Okay, points out the problem.
Then it proposes an obviously absurd, exaggerated fix for that problem.
The joke policy.
Right. And the genius is that the very absurdity of that fake fix, in its stark contrast to the real problem, actually reveals the true, often simple fix.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A ministry of queue management sounds absurd, but its absurdity highlights a real need for better public service design, efficiency, maybe just treating citizens' time with more respect. The absurd solution points towards the sensible one: compassion, accountability, transparency, common sense.
It's like comedic reverse engineering of societal improvement.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Comedic reverse engineering. I like that. And then quickly, you also have the view from political communication scholars.
What do they add?
Their perspective often focuses on how satire lowers those cognitive barriers, making politics accessible a big plus. But they also emphasize that it must preserve something they call epistemic humility.
Epistemic humility. Sounds complicated.
It just means, essentially, remembering that while a good joke can brilliantly shine a light on a truth, it doesn't give you license to invent or distort facts just for laughs. The humor should serve to illuminate, to point towards an underlying reality, not to dictate or obscure that reality with misinformation.
So the joke points to the truth. It isn't the truth itself.
Exactly. It's a pointer, not an absolute statement of fact. Stepping back for a moment, what all these theoretical lenses give us is this really robust framework. For understanding satire's profound role, it's not just entertainment. It's a critical component of public discourse, social commentary, even moral reflection in a society.
So humor, especially this relatable president for a day stuff, isn't trivial at all.
Not at all. It's a sophisticated mechanism for social analysis, for engagement, capable of performing really vital functions within a healthy, self-critical society.
Okay, we've definitely unpacked the theory. Now let's see it in action. Let's talk about some iconic examples, some case studies where this kind of satire really resonated, maybe even made a tangible difference in the real world. Because this isn't just about abstract ideas, right? It's about actual impact.
Absolutely. Theory is one thing, seeing it play out is another.
All right, where should we start? How about a classic from the US? The Colbert Super PAC. Remember that?
Oh, definitely. Stephen Colbert, 2011-2012. Brilliant stuff.
For those who don't know, Colbert, the comedian, launched his own actual legally registered super PAC. His entire endeavor was this elaborate comedic performance.
All completely legal, which was part of the point.
Exactly. It was designed to expose the absurdity, the loopholes within campaign finance laws in the United States. He demonstrated in excruciating and hilarious detail how money could influence politics, how independent expenditures worked, how opaque the whole system could be.
All while pretending to actually use the system to influence an election.
Right. He made the complexities of election spending more vivid, more memorable than any dry explainer video or academic paper ever could. He showed the problems, didn't just tell us about them, and it sparked a huge national conversation.
A perfect example of satire highlighting systemic flaws through performance. Okay, where else?
We have to revisit John Nahr's Best Party in Iceland again, because it's just such a standout example of moving from joke to reality.
Agreed. It really is unparalleled.
It began with those undeniably comedic pledges we talked about, the polar bear, the free towels, the minister of queuing.
The ultimate satirical platform.
But the crucial part, the truly mind-blowing part, is that they won, and then they governed. This wasn't just a fleeting protest vote that fizzled out.
Right, it wasn't just a moment, it was a term in office.
It was proof that these joke platforms can sometimes actually surface real administrative reforms. Nahr's time as mayor brought this fresh, less formal, often more transparent approach to local government. It showed that humor and sincerity, or humor and effective governance, aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
It moved directly from satirical critique to tangible, real-world change that most people would have thought completely impossible. It really challenges assumptions.
Okay, so Colbert, Nahr. What about longer-term influence? Can satire shape perceptions over time?
Absolutely. Think about the power of TV satire shaping perception. And yes, Minister is probably the prime example here.
Sir Humphrey Appleby.
Exactly. The British sitcom and its sequel, yes, Prime Minister, depicted the perpetual struggle between the well-meaning, often naive minister, Jim Hacker, and his shrewd, cynical, obstructionist civil servants like Sir Humphrey.
It was fictional, but felt very real.
That's the key. While fictional, those shows deeply seated public skepticism about bureaucratic inertia, government inefficiency, the often frustrating complexities of public administration. It created this durable civic narrative.
It gave people a language for that frustration.
Precisely. It influenced public opinion for decades, becoming this widely understood cultural touchstone for discussions about public service and its perceived shortcomings. I mean, how many times have you heard someone mutter, "Yes, minister," when dealing with some ridiculous bureaucratic hurdle?
All the time. That collective sigh of understanding, right? The show captured it perfectly.
Exactly. And in our current digital age, we see a similar, maybe faster pace impact from digital shorts and micro-utopias.
What do you mean by micro-utopias?
Think of those viral sketches you might see online. A minister of queuing proposing an elaborate system of digital tokens in single windows, or a mock decree for a ban on Monday emails, or the much-loved National Nap Hour for civil servants.
Yeah, those little fantasy fixes.
They aren't just funny sketches. They make common policy pain points, things that annoy us every day, immediately legible and relatable through humor. They distill these complex feelings of frustration about inefficiency or burnout or bureaucracy into short, impactful pieces.
And they resonate because we've all felt those things.
Right. They create these little micro-utopias where our daily grievances are playfully addressed, even solved, for a minute or two. What this all means for the power of comedic storytelling, I think, is that it's not just about fleeting amusement.
It has lasting effects.
It can create lasting cultural narratives, like Yes, Minister. It can spark public debate, like Colbert. And in some cases, like NAR, it can even drive profound political or administrative changes. It has this significant, often underestimated role in shaping our societies.
That's a fantastic point because, while that impulse, the urge to make fun of power, seems pretty universal, the way we do it, that seems deeply cultural, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Different societies put their own unique spin on this President for a Day trope. It reflects their distinct humor, their political systems, their societal norms.
Okay, let's take a quick trip around the world. Where should we start? How about South Asia?
Okay, South Asia. What's the flavor there?
Here you'll often find what you could call food as policy humor. Think back to our free Biryani Fridays example, or maybe a fictional chai subsidy act.
So linking policy directly to everyday food items.
Exactly. And it's not just about food, obviously. It's this brilliant way to translate issues like inflation, economic disparity, questions of dignity into warm, highly shareable, culturally specific comedy. Food is so central to social life there, so tying policy to it makes the critique incredibly relatable, immediate, speaks right to shared experiences of daily life.
Clever. Okay, where next? How about the UK and Ireland?
Here you encounter that tradition of deadpan mock statutes, sardonic manifestos.
Very dry wit.
Very dry. This style reflects that long history of dry parliamentary wit, understatement, a certain self-deprecating British or Irish humor. The comedy often comes from the meticulous, almost overly formal language applied to utterly absurd or trivial policies, delivered with a completely straight face.
Like swift, but maybe less biting, more wry.
Often, yeah. It's subtle intellectual humor that frequently critiques the very formality of governance itself, like a theatrical performance of bureaucracy gone slightly mad.
Okay, now let's hop across the Atlantic. The U.S.
The U.S. style is typically characterized by, bigger, more performative stuff. Press briefing spoofs are huge. State of the Union parodies, executive order memes that go viral.
More direct, more spectacle.
Often, yeah. It leans into spectacle, direct confrontation, a more overt comedic style. It kind of mirrors the often dramatic nature of U.S. presidential politics itself. It uses those familiar formats of political communication, the press conference, the address to lampoon the figures and policies directly, often high energy, aiming for immediate impact.
Makes sense. What about the Middle East and North Africa, or Turkey? Satire must be trickier there sometimes.
It can be, and that's why satire in these regions often leans more allegorical or even musical.
Using indirect methods.
It's often a strategic choice. It helps satirists navigate political red lines, sensitivities, potential censorship by using coded language, fables, songs, indirect references. They can still signal critique, express dissatisfaction to a knowing audience.
Without sticking their necks out quite so far.
Exactly. Without incurring the same direct risks that a more explicit, confrontational style might bring. The humor is often in the cleverness of the subtext, the ability to say a lot without actually saying it explicitly.
A different kind of wit required there. Okay, one more region, East Asia.
East Asia, yeah. Here you'll often see things like variety show formats, even anime parodies used for political satire.
Interesting. What's the focus?
These frequently emphasize things like etiquette, bureaucracy, collective order as comedic levers. The humor often taps into deep cultural values of harmony, conformity, politeness. by comically disrupting them.
Yeah.
For example, a satirical policy might introduce some incredibly elaborate, completely unnecessary bureaucratic step just to achieve something simple, playing on frustrations with red tape, while also subtly commenting on those societal expectations around order and process.
So the humor comes from breaking the expected norms.
Exactly. The broader implication here really is that these cultural variations show us something fundamental. While that core human desire to critique power through humor is universal,
The way we do it is local.
precisely. The specific expressions are deeply intertwined with local cultural norms, political contexts, communication styles. Satire acts like a mirror, reflecting our diverse societies back at us, showing how each culture finds its own unique comedic voice to engage with the serious business of governance. Okay. So we've gone deep into the history, the psychology, the cultural variations. After this whole deep dive into President for a Day satire, let's try and weigh the pros and cons. Draw up a balance sheet, maybe. What are the undeniable strengths, the really exciting benefits of this format? And where do its weaknesses, its dangers truly lie?
Yeah, it's important to have a critical perspective. It's a powerful tool, like we said. But every tool has limitations and the potential for misuse.
All right, let's start with the strengths. What's clearly good about this kind of satire?
Well, first, it provides a really accessible entry point to civic issues. We keep coming back to this, but it's key.
Right, easier than reading policy docs.
Exactly. For many people, complex policy papers are just impenetrable. But a joke about National Nap Hour, that can immediately get people thinking about productivity, worker well-being, public sector efficiency.
Okay, accessibility, what else?
Second, it uses sticky metaphors. These memorable analogies and scenarios like free Biryani Fridays, they really aid retention. They make abstract concepts concrete and easy to remember.
Yeah, Minister of Queuing is more memorable than Service Delivery Optimization Framework.
Chuckles, precisely. Third, it's great for community building. Shared jokes, shared laughter over a common frustration. It fosters understanding, creates those in-group bonds we talked about. People feel less alone in their complaint.
Connects people.
And finally, it offers emotional relief. It provides that much-needed outlet for anxiety and frustration about politics. Serves as that psychological pressure valve.
Okay, so accessible, memorable, connects people, offers relief. Sounds pretty good. What about the downsides, the weaknesses?
Well, one significant drawback is that humor, by its nature, sometimes has to simplify things to land the punchline, which means it can oversimplify complex policy trade-offs.
How is that a weakness?
Because real-world policy often involves really difficult choices, compromises, unintended consequences. Satire, in its quest for a laugh, can sometimes flatten these complexities, making problems seem easier to solve than they actually are.
Ah, okay. It can hide the difficulty.
It can. Another risk is audience cynicism. While satire can effectively vent frustration, if it's not handled carefully or if it's all someone consumes, it can potentially lead audiences to believe that everything's broken, nothing works, and nothing can truly be faced, which could foster disengagement, apathy, rather than constructive action. Why bother if it's all a joke, sort of thing.
That's a real danger. Okay, weaknesses noted. What about the benefits beyond the initial strengths?
The benefits are significant too. First, this format effectively surfaces priorities. When people react strongly, positively or negatively, to a joke about long queues or potholes, it really highlights what issues truly matter to the public in their daily lives. It's like informal polling.
Gives you a read on public sentiment.
Exactly. Second, it can help inoculate against propaganda. How? By modeling skepticism, critical thinking through humor. It trains audiences, subtly, to question official narratives, to look beneath the surface, to not take everything at face value.
Develops a healthy skepticism.
Hopefully. And third, it fosters creativity in problem framing. By thinking up absurd solutions, people are often encouraged, maybe indirectly, to think outside the box about real solutions. It challenges conventional approaches, opens up thinking.
Okay, benefits. Surfaces priorities, builds skepticism, fosters creativity. Now, the scary part. The dangers.
Right. We touched on these, but let's list them clearly. The most critical, perhaps, is misinterpretation as real policy.
The misinformation risk again.
Yes. If satire isn't clearly signposted, it can be taken literally, especially in our hyper-connected, often decontextualized digital world, leading to confusion, spreading falsehoods.
Big danger. What else?
There's the risk of harassment if it targets individuals or identities. We talked about punching down when humor shifts from civic critique to a personal attack or targets a group. It becomes deeply problematic. unethical. It's bullying disguised as a joke.
Crosses a critical line.
Absolutely.
No.
And finally, related to that, there are potential platform violations. If that line between critique and hate speech or harassment is crossed, platforms can, and often do, remove content or issue penalties, limiting reach, even deplatforming creators.
So there are real consequences for getting it wrong.
Definitely. So looking at this whole balance sheet, strengths, weaknesses, benefits, dangers, it brings us back to that core question. How do we maximize the immense benefits of this form of satire while actively mitigating its inherent risks?
Yeah, how do we keep the good stuff and avoid the bad?
It really comes down to crafting the message carefully, thinking about intent, audience, context. Ensuring the satire aims for impact and insight, not just cheap laughs, confusion, or harm. Good satire ultimately educates as much as it entertains, and getting that balance right is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so maybe some listeners are feeling inspired now. After all this talk, maybe they want to try creating their own little president for a day bit. Maybe for social media, maybe just as a fun thought exercise with friends.
Could be a great way to process things.
So we've gathered a kind of practical blueprint based on everything we've discussed from our sources, a guide for creating your own policy-safe, audience-ready president for a day segment, focusing on being both creative and responsible.
Good idea. So what's step one?
The first, and honestly the most crucial step, unmistakable framing. You absolutely have to send clear signals that what you're presenting is satire. It cannot be ambiguous.
How do you do that effectively online?
Suggest using clear on-screen banners, maybe. Something like alt-reality policy hour satire, right on the video. Or maybe start with a cold open that immediately sets the tone.
Like what?
Like looking seriously into the camera and saying, okay, for the next 60 seconds, I'm president for a day. Please do not call the actual cabinet. This is not real. Something totally explicit.
Right. Leave no room for doubt. These cues are vital to prevent misunderstanding, maintain that benign aspect of the benign violation theory we talked about. Don't let people think it's real news.
Exactly. Once that's crystal clear, you can dive into maybe some recurring segments. Ideas that are tight, punchy, easy for people to remix or build on.
Okay, like what kind of segments?
How about executive orders that go too far on purpose? This is the classic format.
Right. So let's take our favorite, EOTA 1, Free Biryani Fridays. How would that actually play out in a satirical bit following this blueprint?
Okay, so you'd start with the absurd premise, right? Deliver it with full presidential gravitas. My fellow citizens, effective immediately by executive order, every person waiting in any government line for more than 15 minutes shall receive a complimentary token for one delicious biryani.
Chuckles. Okay, you get the laugh from the sheer impossibility, the glorious absurdity.
Exactly. And then comes the pivot. The game of the scene, as the improv folks call it. The president would continue, maybe leaning in conspiratorially. But seriously, folks, why are people waiting so long? This isn't really about biryani, is it? It's about efficient service delivery. It's about respecting citizens' time. We need single window processing. We need digital queue management, not just tasty food incentives.
I see. The joke opens the door directly to the real practical insight about queue reform or whatever the underlying issue is. You use the absurd to point to the sensible.
Precisely. You could do the same with EOZO 2, National Nap Hour, a mock decree for all public sector employees. Maybe you throw in some humorous, pseudoscientific justification about optimizing brain cycles through mandatory siestas. And then you pivot to a quick, maybe slightly funny explainer on public sector productivity, burnout, maybe even bring in a fake sleep science expert graphic for extra laughs.
EO03, Ministry of Queue Management. The title itself is the joke.
Right. But you use that absurd title to connect to real-world best practices. Talk about single windows, digital tokens, customer service training, highlighting that common frustration with public services using the funny title as the hook. Our new minister will ensure optimal queue flow with KPI-driven biryani distribution protocols. Gets a laugh, makes the point.
Perfect. Or EO04, the 15-Minute Meeting Act, a mock constitutional clause delivered solemnly. Then you immediately cut to some real, shocking statistics about meeting drain, meeting overload in both corporate and public sectors. Reveal that widespread pain point we all recognize. Henceforth, no meeting shall exceed the time it takes to brew and properly enjoy one cup of tea.
Chuckles. Love it. Okay, another format idea. The budget, you can understand. Budgets are usually so dense.
How would you satirize that?
Maybe use simple animation, show a wallet or a pie chart splitting into basic categories, health, schools, roads, then add a clearly comedic slice labeled jokes or admin. Then dramatically, maybe with a sad trombone sound effect, you remove the joke, slice, and state gravely. See, this slice should be labeled essential infrastructure maintenance, but it's not. It makes complex financial ideas tangible, highlights misallocated funds or overlooked necessities in a highly memorable visual way, allows you to quickly land a real policy critique humorously.
Very clever. What about making it interactive?
How about an opposition reply improv segment? You could bring in a guest improviser, maybe a friend, pretending to be the leader of the opposition.
And they react to your crazy policies.
Exactly. You propose your absurd executive order, mandatory polka music Fridays, and they have to counter it, improv style, with one feasible, grounded alternative. Perhaps we could focus on funding community arts programs instead. The comedy of your ridiculous policy sets up the problem. Their improvised, clear response offers a potential, more realistic solution. It's brilliant for demonstrating critical thinking and engagement in a fun way.
That sounds like fun to watch and make. Now, what about the responsible part?
Crucially, always try to include a civic call to action, no sarcasm at the end.
Why is that so important?
Because humor, ideally, should lead somewhere beyond just the laugh. Provide one real link to a citizen service portal where people can actually report potholes, to a local volunteer initiative addressing food insecurity, information on how to contact local representatives. Connect the bit back to reality. Give the audience a tangible next step.
Good point. Turn the energy into action. And you mentioned safety notes earlier.
Right. Safety notes for platform compliance are vital. Quick recap. Label your satire clearly, visually, and verbally. Avoid hate speech, harassment, targeted insults, punch up, not down. Absolutely no calls to violence or dangerous challenges. If you use real stats alongside jokes, fact-check those stats meticulously. Use stock footage or original footage you have the rights to. And definitely avoid misleading thumbnails that imply endorsement by real public figures when it's satire.
The broader implication here, really, is the deliberate structure needed to make satire work well. Make it effective, insightful, and safe. It's not just firing off random jokes. It's a carefully constructed narrative designed to both entertain and inform while protecting creators and audiences by clearly marking those boundaries of play.
Okay, need a bit more inspiration, maybe some ready-made ideas to riff on. Here are a few clean, repeatable President for a Day bits drawn from our sources, ready for your own spin. These are great templates for tackling common frustrations with that comedic yet insightful touch.
All right, hit me with the starter pack.
First up, the No Reply All decree. Simple, universal. You'd make a grand proclamation outlawing reply all beyond, say, 5 recipients. Then you seamlessly weave in some real email hygiene tips about using BCCs, subject lines, etc.
And the underlying issue being addressed.
Email overload, inefficient communication, that daily digital deluge we all face, instantly relatable.
Okay, good one. Next.
How about a public transport karaoke hour? Sounds nuts, right?
Definitely sounds nuts.
But you frame it as a bold, innovative ridership campaign disguised as fun, encouraging community spirit, making the commute less boring, maybe mandatory sing-alongs during peak hours.
It's an underlying issue.
Boosting public transport use, tackling community apathy, maybe just making shared public spaces a bit more enjoyable and human, building connections, one bad karaoke song at a time.
Okay, I can see the angle. What else?
Honesty receipts for officials. This one's great. Imagine every official press conference has to end with the spokesperson handing out a literal receipt.
A receipt? For what?
For the information. A plain language. One pager summarizing what was actually announced, what commitments were actually made, what it means for citizens. Presented as a comedic prop, of course.
But with a serious message underneath.
Exactly. About transparency, cutting through bureaucratic jargon, holding officials accountable for their words. The underlying issue, government transparency, and that pervasive, obscure language that alienates people.
Clever prop. Got it up.
How about the civic espresso shot?
Intriguing name.
Picture this. Every government office, first thing in the morning, has to deliver a 60-second brief, like an espresso shot of info, explaining clearly what service is offered here, roughly how long it will take today, what documents you definitely need.
Okay, that actually sounds useful. Where's the satire?
Maybe the delivery is overly dramatic. And then, for extra comedic punch, if they miss their time estimate for your service by more than, say, 10 minutes, you get a compensatory biryani token.
Yeah, the biryani returns.
It always comes back to biryani. The underlying issue. Bureaucratic efficiency, improving the citizen service experience, tackling that frustrating feeling of wasted time, all with a dash of humor and pastry-based compensation.
Okay, last one from the starter pack.
Let's go hyperlocal. Memes as feedback portal.
Using memes for government feedback.
Yeah. Citizens submit memes about local problems. Potholes are a classic. The best, funniest, most accurate meme about a specific pothole gets mapped directly to a repair ticket in the city system.
So it's like gamified infrastructure reporting.
Exactly, with moderation, obviously. But it turns a common complaint into a fun, potentially viral, actionable process. Underlying issues, improving infrastructure reporting, boosting citizen engagement, maybe even getting roads fixed faster through the power of dank memes.
Each of these humorous policies, when you really look closely, is just a clever, engaging way to highlight a very real problem, isn't it? And gently nudge towards a practical, often obvious solution. They reveal the true fix by proposing an absurd one. They really show how this present-for-a-day format can be such a potent vehicle for public discourse, even on those seemingly mundane but deeply frustrating everyday issues. #X, leading voices on laughter and legislation.
Okay, so to really round out our understanding, let's bring in some other voices. Let's hear what leading thinkers, experts from various fields have to say about this powerful blend of laughter and legislation. It really shows just how multifaceted this whole topic is.
Yeah, looking at it through different disciplinary lenses can be really insightful.
All right, first up, political communication scholars. What's their general take on this kind of satire?
Their view often emphasizes how satire lowers those cognitive barriers we keep mentioning. Makes politics more accessible, a big plus. However, they also stress that it absolutely must preserve that epistemic humility we touched on.
Remind me what that means again.
It means remembering and making clear that while a joke can brilliantly illuminate a truth, it doesn't give you license to just invent facts or distort reality for the sake of the laugh. The humor should serve the truth, point towards it, not obscure it or replace it with misinformation. It's a crucial distinction for them. The joke points to truth. It isn't a truth that justifies any old joke.
Got it. Okay, who's next? How about sociologists of humor?
From their perspective, the President for a Day format often produces what they call collective effervescence.
Collective effervescence, like bubbles.
Chuckles. Sort of. It refers to those brief, powerful moments where people feel a shared sense of energy, excitement, power together. Imagine a whole comment section erupting in laughter and agreement over a satirical policy that shared experience fosters social bonds, strengthens collective identity. It creates this sense of solidarity among those who get the joke and its underlying message, like a fleeting, joyous, communal uprising against absurdity or frustration.
That feeling of we're all in this together.
Exactly. But then, you also have the critics of political comedy, and their warnings are really important to hear.
What are their main concerns?
They often caution against something called performative cynicism.
Performative cynicism, meaning just pretending to be cynical.
Or more specifically, the concern that audiences might mistake the act of laughing at the satire or sharing the meme for actual political participation. They might feel good about themselves for identifying with the joke, for getting it, but then do absolutely nothing beyond that click or chuckle.
So the laughter becomes a substitute for action.
That's the worry. These critics argue that creators, and perhaps audiences too, should consciously try to route that energy, the energy generated by the humor, into tangible microactions, ensuring that the humor acts as a springboard to engagement, not a comfortable couch of disengagement. That's a powerful and legitimate concern, isn't it? Does laughter sometimes replace actual civic action, or can it genuinely motivate it? It's a key question.
It really is. Okay, one more perspective. How about the people who actually make this stuff?
Right, the practitioners, improv artists, comedy writers, their advice is often very practical, focused on craft. They'll talk about structuring the bit with a clear game of the scene.
Game of the scene.
Yeah, it's an improv concept. It means you identify the absurd rule or premise, for example, reply all is now illegal. Then you escalate it logically, but humorously. The penalty is having to hand deliver apologies.
Right.
And then, crucially for this kind of satire, you always tag it with that civic out or takeaway message we discussed.
So there's a structure to make it funny and meaningful.
Exactly. It ensures a coherent comedic arc, but also a thematic one, where the joke eventually circles back to a real-world insight or maybe even that call to action. The key takeaway from bringing in all these voices, I think, is that understanding this genre really requires looking at it through multiple lenses.
Communication theory, sociology, moral philosophy, even the practical art of comedy writing.
Right. It truly is a multifaceted phenomenon, deeply embedded in how we understand, react to, and maybe even try to change the world around us. #tagoutro.
Wow. So from the ancient jester trading jokes for truth, all the way to the viral executive order memes flooding our feeds today, We've really taken a comprehensive deep dive, haven't we? Into the surprisingly profound world of President for a Day satire.
We really have.
We've seen how it's often not just about getting a quick laugh. It can be this: playful dress rehearsal for democracy, a way to stress test values like fairness, dignity, competence, all inside a relatively safe imaginary sandbox.
And when it's done with care, with clear intent, this type of humor really does have incredible power, doesn't it? It can convert frustration into understanding, into literacy. It can turn laughter into these tiny, maybe crucial doses of agency, feeling like you get it, feeling like you're not alone.
Yeah.
But also leaves us, and hopefully you, the listener, with some important questions to mull over. Big questions, really.
Like what?
Like, could satire become a standard tool in civic user experience? Imagine funny, satirical policy explainers being issued right alongside the actual dense legislative bills. Would that help engagement?
Interesting idea.
And how do we preserve the ethics of punching up, not punching down, especially across the increasingly polarized, fragmented online ecosystems we live in?
That's a tough one.
And maybe practically, what design cues, visual, verbal, can most clearly mark satire online to prevent misinformation, but without completely killing the wit and the punch? How do you signal joke effectively without ruining the joke?
Those are definitely things to think about. And we want to hear your thoughts too. If you were president for just one day, what's your first hilarious but maybe secretly helpful executive order? Let us know.
Or maybe pick just one everyday problem you face, a bureaucratic hurdle, a community issue, and suggest one tiny realistic improvement. Share it in the comments or wherever you engage with us.
We've also included some excellent resources and examples in the show notes for you to explore further, including links to some of the case studies we talked about, like John Nahr and Colbert.
Definitely check those out.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the surprising power, the ethical tightropes, and the playful possibilities of political humor.
It's been fascinating.
Until next time, keep laughing and keep thinking.